This is Richard Carlton for LearningFileMaker.com. You're listening to a previously recorded live presentation at FileMaker's headquarters for the FileMaker User Group meeting in Santa Clara, California, for May 2015. Now, this previously recorded broadcast is really awesome because FileMaker staff are going to give you a tour of the new FileMaker 14 release and demonstrate some of the cooler features of this major update. Now, as a quick note, this live broadcast is funded and paid for by LearningFileMaker.com, where you can purchase the new FileMaker 14 video training course, which contains 33 hours of content covering FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Server. Now, this course is highly animated, and we've worked hard to make sure that it is entertaining for everyone. So we need to give credit to the sponsor here for bringing this production to us. So without further ado, let's get this rolling. I want to introduce Bill Griffin, Business Account Manager for the Northwest. That's part of FileMaker's sales team. So Bill, take it away.
Hello. How's everyone doing today? Can everyone hear me? Good? We're good? Yeah. I'm seeing some no's, but that's all right. So thank you everyone for coming to Dig FM. It's a pretty special user group meeting tonight. As you probably know, we released version 14 on Tuesday, and we're really excited about a lot of the improvements that have been made to specific areas of the platform. And so this is my first release since I've been here at FileMaker, and the last couple days have been a whirlwind. Actually, the last couple weeks have been a whirlwind. But so anyway, just want to say thank you again for coming. We have some people that are joining us remotely, and want to thank Richard Carlton especially for that. You know, passing out the invites and getting the webinar up and running. Tonight we have Rosemary TG. Hopefully you guys brought a lot of questions and really test her. Make her earn her keep tonight.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Take it over.
So with that, I'm just going to dive in. How many of you either saw the preview webinar we did back in April or downloaded the preview release and have been playing with FileMaker 14 for the last month? Okay, so for those of you on the phone, that's about half the people in the room. For those of you who didn't, if you didn't because you didn't have time, great, that's cool. And the other thing is I just want to mention that the FileMaker developer subscription in the FileMaker community is what enables you to get that access. So it's a $99 a year program, and with that you get a development license for FileMaker Server, access to the FileMaker training series, so for 13 now and the 14 when it's released, and also in the 30 to 60 days before we do a product launch, so when available, you also get access to preview software, so beta versions of the software, and usually a webinar, an introductory webinar to the new features in that release. So it's a great value. So with that plug, I'm going to talk about what's new across the platform. We've made improvements across the entire platform in all the clients, in server, and in several different areas. And some of the key themes are faster, more efficient development with the new script workspace, mobile browser support for tablets with FileMaker WebDirect, tools in layout mode to help you design better in FileMaker Pro to make more modern designs, again, continuing to design for the times, and to take advantage of a lot of new features that make building layouts and maintaining layouts a lot faster and easier. The new Launch Center, which gives us the same open dialogue and the same look across every client in the platform. There's a bunch of FileMaker Go improvements, and I'll dive into those. But the net of that is it gives you the ability to have a much more native iOS experience in your FileMaker Go solutions. And then there's a bunch of enhancements, as always, to FileMaker Server. So again, as I said, we've made improvements all across the platform in the development and desktop tools, FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Pro Advanced, in FileMaker Go, the iOS client, in FileMaker WebDirect, which is the browser-based client, and then in FileMaker Server. So first off, and I think this is from a developer standpoint, everybody's favorite new feature, the script workspace, which, in general, FileMaker scripting is a procedural language that lets you enable automation of your FileMaker solutions. And now all your scripting happens in one streamlined workspace. No more point and click. You can still point and click, and you can still learn, actually learn scripting more easily for new and intermediate developers. But as an experienced developer who knows the FileMaker scripting language pretty well, I find I'm writing scripts much more efficiently, and I'm writing better and easier to maintain scripts because things like commenting in whitespace are so much easier than they were in previous versions. In fact, I've been dabbling in and out of FileMaker 14 for about 6 months now, and every time I was working on a production system in the last 6 months and had to go back and use FileMaker 13, I wanted to tear my hair out, because once you get familiar with the script workspace and comfortable in it, which, you know, if you're an experienced developer, will probably take you a week or two, you don't want to go backwards, because it really feels like stepping back, way back. It's not nearly as efficient. Second, in the FileMaker WebDirect, 2 new things. First, support for mobile browsers on the latest tablets. And second, in our testing, we found that loading WebDirect optimized layouts is up to 25% faster than it was with FileMaker 13 WebDirect. But I'll also say that the anecdotal, what I'm hearing from developers who've been doing extensive testing of WebDirect solutions that are already built and optimized, that moving just from FileMaker Server 13 to FileMaker Server 14, it may be a 25% improvement, but it feels like it's 2 or 3 times faster. And so that's the anecdotal, that's what developers have been telling me and telling us for the last several weeks. There's a bunch of new design tools just to make solutions that look nicer and work better and work more efficiently, and as I said, are easier to maintain. There's a new color palette, so you can get sort of harmonized colors in your solution, and the color palette is now the same on Mac and Windows, and you don't lose your favorite colors in a solution on Windows like you did in prior versions. You've got object component styling, so you can take more control over how objects look. Calendar icons in the pop-up calendar, the little arrow in drop-down lists, checkboxes and radio buttons, and other things like that. And we've got native button icons. There's 140 icons built into FileMaker, and you've got support for custom icons in either PNG or SVG format. You've got the ability to do in-field text or in-field labels to really simplify your layout and form design. And then we've got the new layout object, the button bar, which is like sort of a traditional button, but way cooler. And you've also got a new layout part, the navigation part, which gives you a little bit more flexibility, and it behaves subtly different from the header and footer parts we've had for years. In the new Launch Center, which gives you immediate access to all the solutions you use at a glance, it lets users visually organize their solutions. We can now create custom icons for FileMaker solutions, and there's about 40 built into FileMaker, and again, you can load your own custom icon for a solution as well. And it works the same across the whole platform. So you've got the same basic look for the Launch Center on Mac and Windows, on the iPad, on the iPhone, and in the browser with WebDirect. Finally, for iOS, we've got new iOS user interface and iOS script steps, which give the ability to take more control over the iOS experience by locking screen orientation to portrait or landscape, and in fact, which direction of portrait and landscape. We've got enhancements around signature capture, a lot of inline in iOS video and audio playback control, and finally the ability to enable or disable a touch keyboard when a user taps into the field. Right now, if you tap into a field, you get the keyboard no matter what. You can disable that if you want to. So now, before I talk about FileMaker Server, I'm going to go in and do a demo of Pro, Go, and WebDirect. So first, I'm just going to bring up FileMaker Pro. And so here we have the new Launch Center. And as you can see, I'm showing right now recent files. And as you can see, I've reopened the same file from servers in the same server in many different locations, which is why you're seeing all these things multiple times. And up at the top, I can pin or select a favorite file, and that's simply by if I hover over it, you'll see I've got the ability to highlight or not highlight that star. I can also flip over to hosts, and I'm not going to do that just because in this room, in this environment, it will take forever to load all the hosts, but it's just like going to Open Remote has been. And again, with servers as well, you've got the ability to just hit a star on a server and have it popped to the top of the list. In addition, I can isolate just my favorites if I want to, or I can turn them off. The one thing, and this is something that I think all of us at some point in our early learning of how the Launch Center works did. Yeah. You turn off all your favorites, and then you have no, and then you're like, what's going on? Why isn't this working? What happened to all my files? Well, and it's a little subtle thing, and it's an easy mistake to make. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead here and repin my approvals and go ahead and open that. So what this solution is it's an ad agency approval solution. It's got a basic workflow for managing projects, approval processes, and clients from the in-house users standpoint. And then it also has a WebDirect portal for the ad agency's customers to request work and approve work done on their behalf. And so I'm going to start out by playing the role of Samuel Peterson, who's someone who works in the agency. And so when he comes in the morning, he launches FileMaker and generally would see either in his recents or in his favorites the approvals solution. I'm going to go ahead and open that. I can toggle, this is a button bar, between my approvals and all approvals. And now I'm looking at 28 or so records. And if I'm looking at a single approval, I can go ahead and tap on that approval and take a look at this and say, okay, yes, I approve that. And this is also a button bar, but it's a button bar being used to basically do a value, a two item value list choice. When I do that, you'll see here I've got my inline comments. So I don't have a field label there, but I've got some prompting for the user saying, hey, go ahead and type your comment here. And unlike all the tricks we've used to do this in the past, as soon as I type anything, the text just vanishes. Looks great. And I'm just going to add a note here for the next person in the review process to please color check that. And as soon as I save that, you'll see down here I get the indicator that I've made a comment. Any user can come over and look at that comment and go back. And so one other thing I want to mention is we have some limited gesture support now in FileMaker Pro. So if I think, oh, maybe swiping isn't working now. It was, but it is definitely for Windows tablets, you do get some gesture support like you do in FileMaker Go on iOS. And you see now that I've made that approval, I don't have any approvals to do anymore. So one other thing I want to mention is up here I have a navigation part. So I have another file that I'm going to open now. If I can find it, and I am going to have to go over to my host and hope my favorite host is here. And there is my other file I have. And this is just a little more detailed, what we call a grab bag file that kind of highlights some of those features. So here's the navigation part. And here on the bottom, I have something that's not a navigation part, that's a footer on the layout. So in browse mode, in a form view layout, they look pretty much the same, right? I've had a lot of customers ask me, so I don't get the navigation part. What's so special about it? What makes it different? Well, so the first thing is navigation parts don't zoom. So when I zoom in, you'll see, I'm like now down here, I'm at 150%, but my navigation part stayed at 100%, my footer part did zoom. So that's one difference. The other difference is navigation parts don't print. So if I go into preview mode right now, I've got no navigation part up at the top. And I think if I go back to browse mode and go back to my zoom layout, In addition to not zooming, navigation parts don't scroll off the screen in Form View, and also don't scroll off the screen in iOS. So if I want to put some navigation, a button bar that does navigation at the top of my, especially iPhone, when you scroll a Form View on the iPhone in FileMaker Go 13, the header scrolls out of view. With the navigation part, it stays in view all the time. So that's a little bit about the navigation part. Let me zoom out and switch back to my approvals solution again. And now I am going to show that same solution in FileMaker Go. But first, I'm just going to pop up my iPad and hopefully go to QuickTime and make sure it's still broadcasting. Looks good. So I'm looking now at the files on my device. So again, I'm looking at the Launch Center, and I can go to Recent Files, and I can go over to Hosts, and now you'll see I can tap on that same approvals solution. And now, there it is again. I'm now still Bill. I'm out, maybe visiting clients in the afternoon. So I'm now looking at that same solution on the iPad. But you'll notice something missing on this iPad layout. I don't have the button bar set up there. So let's go in and build that right now. So I'm going to switch to that same tablet layout and go into layout mode. And I'm going to draw the button bar. So the button bar is up here in the toolbar next to buttons, next to the button and popover button. And to make room, just in case you're looking for them, we hid the rectangle, rounded rectangle, and oval under the same control. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my button bar and drag it out here and drop it into my top navigation part. So here's the button bar heads-up display. And you'll see I've got some choices. I've got choices for orientation. I've got choices for whether or not I want to use an icon, and in this case I am going to go ahead and select an icon. And then I'm going to go ahead and set up my labels. So the first one was My Approvals, and for that I'll use the inbox icon. The next segment is All Approvals, and for that I'll use a list icon. And the last one is, projects, the solution built into FileMaker that really says projects to me. So I'm going to go ahead and go out to my computer, and maybe I downloaded something or I have an icon collection I've gathered, and I actually don't want to use that one. I want to go to my desktop and grab this PNG icon. And I'm going to go ahead and use that one. And that, now you'll notice, is added to my toolbar, and that is now part of this particular FileMaker file, so I can go ahead and grab that icon whenever I want to use it. And there it is on my button. So one other thing about button bars, two other things about button bars. You'll notice I've got access to the calculation engine for my labels on button bars, so I can dynamically name my buttons. The other thing is I can toggle my button bar behavior between a button and a popover button. So in one button bar, I can have a mixture of popovers and regular buttons, and I can change them at will. So if you set something up as a button and realize later maybe I don't need to go to another layout or pop up a new window, I can just do whatever it was I was going to do in a popover. You can make that change without having to throw away the old object and add a new object. Again, making developers more efficient. The one warning I will have there, though, is if you switch from popover back to button, you will lose everything that's in that popover. So open it up, grab everything, and copy it, and put it somewhere before you do that. So now let's just dive in a little bit more. So before I go back to the iPad, there it is. That's what it looks like. But I haven't programmed these to do anything, so they're not interactive yet. I want to dive in a little bit more on button bars. So first, as I said, you've got lots of choices. just an icon, just text, icons and text on either, either side, above, below. They can also be horizontal or vertical. So every one of these objects is a button bar. And so the trick for this one, where I've got icons and icons kind of left justified, or icons right justified, text left up justified, is in my appearance. I'm using full justification for my style. So if I go right, if I change that alignment, centered, right, full, that's how I get that spacing. So I've got the segment, which is the individual button, the individual part. I've got the button bar as a whole, and then I've got the divider, which is those little lines, horizontal or vertical lines in between, and then finally the icon. So there's 4 different parts to style, and then for each of those parts, I've got all the states. So there's a bit of, there's a lot of richness and a lot of complexity there. And I think I stole some of my own thunder on that. So if I continue exploring the button bar, so here I've got, a button, a button, a button. And you'll notice the other thing that's happening is I've got my various states, and then when I select something, I'm setting what's called the active state. So that is, so I can have a single button bar, and just if I want that same navigation bar to go across several layouts, on each layout, all I need to do to change, the sort of selected place I am in my navigation scheme is I'm setting which button has the active state. And I can do that explicitly in the control, or I can do it by calculation. So I can also have a popover button, obviously. That can be a button. The one thing I can't have is a sub popover. So we're not going to let you can't put a popover inside of a popover and get some sort of craziness. So you can't put a button bar popover inside of a popover either. So those rules still all hold. And so here you can see I've got my active segment indicated. And when you've got an active segment selected, I don't get hover or click effects on it because it is the active segment. So talking about the active segment, I can specify in the button bar setup which one is the active segment. So I select that segment. So here I've selected button bar and indicated that that is the active segment. And then I've got this special styling for the active segment. So if we go back into my other window, my approval solution, go back into layout mode here. So on this layout, I want my approvals to be my active segment. I can go ahead and say here, make my approvals be the active segment. And I don't see a change in layout mode, but when I go into browse mode on both FileMaker Pro and the iPad, which went to sleep, you can all see my super secret passcode. It should reconnect, and now you can see on the iPad as well, I have that active segment. So a few other things about these. I've got actions. I can specify single perform a step, single script step, or perform a script. And then I can have, as I said earlier, popovers and set all of that up. Script triggers, everything else you can do with popover buttons. And then, as I said, the last thing is I've got conditional visibility. I can use the object visibility to show and hide segments. So in this case, what I've got is I'm calculating my segment names based on my list here, and I'm saying only reveal these. So if I want to say for a specific user based on his privileges, this user can't see reports, go ahead and remove that, commit it. You'll notice my button bar stays the same width, that button disappears, and all the other buttons proportionally resize. Yay, cool? Yeah. And so this is the thing, like that I had an epiphany about this personally when Andy was demoing at FMDisc on Friday. I was trying to solve a specific problem in the FBA Sales Assist, which those of you who are FBA members probably got earlier this week. There's a new version of that available. But I had a button bar that is basically replacing a value list, but depending on the selection somewhere else, I wanted to show either 2 or 3 buttons. So I'm like, do I have to make 2 button bars and do visibility and all of that? And then suddenly I realized I can have one 5-segment button bar, and depending on the choice above, show the 2 buttons I need for choice A or the 3 buttons I need for choice B. And it's one object, and you don't need to do a refresh object on the button bar. It just kind of, sometimes you do need to do a refresh object, but much of the time you make that change, and you'll notice it just updated. I don't have any script triggers on this layout to do that updating. You know, the other thing I can do here, because I'm calculating these, I shouldn't use, so if I just take something out, now I've only got 4 segments, put one in, I can reorder using the calculations, do all of those things. The other way to reorder segments is in layout mode. If I select a segment, I can just, you know, just like with tab panels, I can just pick up a segment and drag it around if I get it right. So now my order is going to be all messed up because I did that. So that's the visibility, calculations, and finally, talked a little bit about styling and drag to reorder. So let's go back to this one. Talk a little bit about styling. You know, so if I select, you know, one of these, if I select a segment and want to do styling on the segment, I've got all my states, and for example, and go back to my inactive state, and maybe I want to change that color to green, and I don't know if that's projecting well or not, kind of on some of these icons, but you can see, I hope, that now they are all green. And when I hover, they go back to blue and things. So you've got a lot of control over your styles as well. So now I'm going to go back to my other demo file and actually program this button bar to do something. But first I'm going to be really uptight and make it look good. So I'm going to grab the projects button, and I want to go to another layout. I'm going to double click on that and set up my action to be a single step. And that brings up the button action version of the script workspace. So as a novice user, I might just say, I know I need to navigate to a layout, but I don't know where that is in the list. I can just type a few letters, and I now get exposed only the layout related script steps. So I can go ahead and grab go to layout. You'll notice down here I've got a description that tells me in a short version what that script does, what that step does. And I've also got access to help. I can go ahead and if I click help for that, it brings up FileMaker Help for that script step, you know, and gives me all the information I need about it there. So I'm going to go ahead and add that and go over here and select the layout I want to switch to, which is my projects tablet layout. Say OK, say OK, save my layout, go into browse mode, switch back to my iPad, wake it up again, reconnect to the file. There it is. Tap on projects, and I change to this layout. Very cool, right? That's not what's really cool. What's really cool, this has got to be one of my favorite subtle time-saving features of FileMaker 14. So I've got here my single step. How many times have you created a button, assigned a step to it, and then had your customer, a manager, or something come back and say, oh, I don't just want to change to that layout, I also want to show an alert if there are overdue projects. So all of a sudden now I need a script. So then you have to go write the script, and then save it, go back, and then change your button, right? So now I select that. Look right down here in the lower left. Go ahead, do that. Go to projects. I've now got a script. Yay! Whole lot easier. I'm not going to go ahead and do anything with that script quite yet, but there it is. So I want to dive in a little bit more on icons, because really I think this icon, this PNG icon, is kind of ugly. Personally, it doesn't pick up, as a PNG, it doesn't pick up the styling I've got available to me that I get with all the native icons. So if I switch and use an SVG icon, and I've got a couple of those available also. So here I've got another kind of project-like icon that I grabbed off the web, and in a minute I'll share some of my favorite places to get icons. I'm going to go ahead and insert that one instead. And I don't know if this one actually is edited or not to pick up all the other behaviors. So it's doing that. On this layout I've still got the same thing, but let me go in and just subtly change the color. I'm just going to change my icon color here just to see if I'm getting appropriate behavior from that icon. And yes, I am. So sometimes you get icons, though, that don't behave. So you can actually go out on the web and download icons from a source, and it'll be either a weird size and you'll see only part of it in the corner, or you'll see it, but it'll come in like black or white, and it won't change colors, and it won't participate in this beautiful FileMaker theme that you've developed. However, there's a way around that, and I just want to point you to some documentation. First of all, on our website, in the FileMaker Help, in the documentation, so you go to filemaker.com, downloads, scroll down and find the documentation page. We've got documentation of the FileMaker SVG grammar for button icons. So you can go in very easily and hack or edit the SVG to make it participate in FileMaker. So I've got a couple other icons here. Just going to hide everything in my little folder here. So, and I just have to remember which ones work and which ones don't. But I'm going to go ahead and open up this one, this wine glass icon, for example, and open it with BB Edit. So now I'm looking at it with a text editor, because all an SVG is XML. I've got a few things here. So I've got my some information. So I've got height and width. So one thing is you want to check and make sure you've got an explicit height and width size in here. The native FileMaker icons are 20 pixels, but just to keep them small and efficient, this one's a little bigger, and that doesn't matter. And the other thing is, somewhere in icons that don't work or that don't pick up the right colors, there will usually be a fill color, and that's saying, make this icon be that color. If you remove the fill instruction, which this one unfortunately doesn't have, then that icon will participate nicely in FileMaker's styles and themes. So, and one other thing that Richard turned me on to right before the meeting is from his site, Klaus in Denmark, Klaus Levant in Denmark, has built a SVG helper tool that includes some icons and that will also take in other SVG icons and clean them up for you, so you don't have to go in and hack the XML by yourself.
Yeah, you just read the file in, the icon in, and it will automatically make all the adjustments for you, so you don't have to remember the amazing demo that she just showed us.
Yeah.
Just press the button and out it comes.
Yeah.
Because SVGs, most of them on the internet that we're seeing by default, don't necessarily behave well with FileMaker because they're missing that one little bit of fill information. And once you put that in there,
they have fill information,
yeah.
And so you want it the fill information you need to remove. So the other thing is I've got up here, and this is something I'm happy to mail around later, is some of my favorite sources for icons. And some of these places charge for icons. Some of them make them available with attribution under the Creative Commons license. And some of them do both, but if you pay, you can use them widely in your solutions without attribution. And so some of these are icomoon.io, ICOMOON, and they have several different collections. FireR Studio, okay, and so FireR Studio has an SVG, uses SVG as a native format. So this is a tool you can use to create your own SVG icons. and that is iVinci Express, and you can download for free from the Mac App Store. IconsDB is another good free icon set. I like Icon Monster a lot. It's Icon MONSTR, and they have some good fun icons. The Noun project is very rich icons there, and those are my favorite icon sources. So, thenounproject.com. The first one, icomoon.io. Can you read it now? icomoon.io. Questions about icons, button bars before I mush on? Vince? Yes, so just to repeat for everybody on the web, Vince has pointed out that FileMaker 13 and earlier buttons, you could not calculate the label unless you used a variable or a calculation field. So you had to have static text on that button. But with a button bar, you can calculate. So now you can get a single button with a calculation by simply creating a single button, a button bar with one segment. And I suspect a lot of developers may start to do that in some cases. Especially, I mean, the other reason to do that is there are cases where as you're prototyping and building something out, you don't know if you want a button or a popover, and having the flexibility to switch between them is also a really nice bonus. Yes, and the other thing is, as Vince said, it's half the objects. And so one other thing I just want to add about icons, you do also get icons with regular buttons. So if I just go up here and I draw a regular button up here on the layout, the button heads-up display also includes the ability to define an icon and text. So I do also get the icons in regular buttons. And again, I don't have to do any tricks to include the icon as a separate object. If I want to pick this up and move it around, it's one object. I don't have to worry about groups. I can copy and paste it across all my layouts and so on. Okay.
It would seem to me that there's more overhead with this. If you didn't need to calculate, you wouldn't just arbitrarily make button bars.
So the question is, for the web, especially going to WebDirect, would you use button bars instead of button? Which has more overhead? I mean, anytime you're going to have more than one in multiple segments, the button bar is definitely one object. It's much more efficient. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't know about a single segment button bar versus a traditional button.
They're pretty even. We did a lot of testing on this. The biggest issues that people are going to run into, the biggest benefit you can do, is get away from using the PNGs, JPEGs, and GIFs and other things. Now, this system here only uses SVG or PNG, but we were doing some testing and we found out that using the SVGs is much lighter, and that right there will make more of an impact. Instead of driving a PNG downhill, a PNG in each of those, as opposed to SVG, you saw how small it was. It's tiny. So that you're going to get most of your benefit there.
Yeah.
Scale better too.
Yeah.
Up and down.
Yeah. Another observation about SVGs is that they scale better. They render much more nicely if you are changing their size in different locations. All right. Karsten.
So on styling.
So Karsten's question is, for styling, if I select, so if I make one of these be a popover button, do I get, does the popover part share the styles that I had before, right? As a standalone. So if I select the popover, yes, it is a popover. What do not share styles are traditional buttons and button bars. There you have two different groups of styles. So if I close that popover and select the button bar, you'll see here I've got button bar as my style. The other thing I learned the hard way by trial and error. You can't actually copy styles from a button and then try to apply it to a button bar. That doesn't work very well either. So you will need to do two sets of, if you're going to use both buttons and button bars, you will need to, and you want them to look and behave the same, you will have to set up all your styles for both of them to be the same. Or do a button bar with a single button. Back here, I converted that single step button to a script. So now let me bring up the script workspace and show you what happened there. So here's my script workspace, and I'm just going to zoom so it's maybe a little bigger and takes up the whole screen. So you guys in the back can see it maybe a little bit better. So you'll notice one thing I get, I've got a couple scripts selected, but I can go ahead here. I'm going to close them all so that you see. So the first thing is, where did that button, that script I created, end up in this list? So down here in the list, I get a folder called Scripts for Buttons. I could also do something here like just say, I think I use projects as a keyword. So there it is. So I get a folder called Scripts for Buttons. And if I just click once on that script, I open it as a preview in the workspace here. So a little bit of orientation. On the left, I have my list of scripts. This being the old Manage Scripts window. And the hardest thing, one of the two hard things to get used to in the new script workspace is my steps are over on the left. They're over here. You know, but as someone who's worked, you know, in a more traditional IDE or development environment, this is the way IDEs are set up. So, you know, for someone coming to FileMaker from a more traditional programming background, this feels very familiar. And it actually becomes pretty easy to adjust to. A couple other things, I've got buttons up here in the upper right that let me show and hide both the script list or the steps pane. You know, in a lot of cases, I don't really need to look at those steps because I know the scripting environment well enough that I can just start typing. Up here is my visibility, so if I want to show visibility, it's this little button here that gives me a little menu to select. You know, it's that old pop-up that says show compatibility before. I can jump, if I've got Pro Advanced on, I can jump right to debug the current script. I can run the current script. I can create a new script. At the top of the scripts list, I've got a few things. One is this shows and hides the checkbox that exposes a script to the scripts menu. If I keep that hidden, I can also right-click on a script and select Include in Scripts menu. The other thing is here, I can say, okay, if I've got a script that I want to run with full access privileges, it's not a checkbox anymore. It's right here. It's called Grant Full Access Privileges. And the other thing you'll notice in the list, I get a little icon that's a little person. So I can quickly scan all of my scripts and see which ones have the full access enabled. And then I can revoke full access if I need to do that. So one thing about separators in this list, they're actually separators. They're not scripts with a special name. So I cannot anymore select that. So if you use the old habit or old practice of hiding scripts in that separator, before you start using FileMaker 14, go in and give those scripts real names, because you won't be able to get to them to edit them, and you won't be able to access them anymore with FileMaker 14. So, I don't know if they're still hidden there or not, and I don't do that, so I don't have anything where I could check. So, you know, if someone wants to test it with FileMaker 13 or an older version, go ahead and report back. So the last thing is, right now this script is not open for editing, but as soon as I select it, as soon as I click in there, now it is open for editing. So from here I can do things like start hitting return and add some lines. You'll notice also I get a little star here that tells me, hey, the script has changes that you haven't saved yet. I can delete, get rid of those lines. I can just start typing. So back, if you remember, the scenario is I wanted to add a custom dialog. So I can say if, right on, I get like a pop-up here, so I can say return, select if. Now I've got access right here. I can inline type my calculation. I don't have to bring up the calculation window. So I can say if projects, there's my projects table, and you see I've got some icons. So I've got projects. Now I've got my field list for the projects table occurrence, and I think it's due date that I want. There's due date is less than get. This is my favorite, because like one thing I always did in scripts is there's a lot of get functions that I can never remember the exact syntax for. So I'd always actually go bring up the gets and then try to find it. Now I just have to say get current date.
Would you press the jump between get and...
So I hit return. So let me just delete this again. So when I said get, so I said get, and if I hit return on get, I get right there. I mean, the other thing I could have done is, if I just said, get space and open paren, I get there too. But the other thing you'll notice, especially in the get, I just need the keyword for one of the keywords in that parameter. I don't need to remember the first keyword of that parameter. So that's really nice. All right, so now I hit return and I want to get a new line, and I don't. You'll notice I'm toggling between editing the calculation and having access to other thing. So to get out of that, when I get into that state, command return or control return will then get me my new line. So that's one of the subtle things that it takes a little while to figure out. The other thing I can do here is if I want to actually bring up the calculation dialog, I don't know if you can tell, but as I use the arrow key, I'm toggling between having the calculation highlighted and having the little function indicator highlighted. If I get into the function and hit the space bar, then I bring up the specify calculation dialog, which you will notice has also been changed around a little bit. So you've still got, your table occurrences and fields over on the left, but now I can search.
Yeah, which is super cool.
Which is super handy and super cool. I've also got, you'll notice some icons here. Let me get rid of everything. You've got icons that show you what field type it is, so you can kind of visually scan and see what your field types are. And then your operators are over here in a column on the right, and then here's all your functions. And again, I can search functions for, whatever it is I need. Keywords and functions as well.
Yeah, this is big.
This is huge, yes. Yeah, and type ahead stuff, as said, all the type ahead stuff works here too. For functions, tables, whatever it is I need. So I don't want to edit that. So let me go back to my script here. So now I got to do my next step. Well, here I need show custom dialog because that's what I want to do. Well, so I could type show and I'll get to custom dialog. I could type custom to get to custom dialog, or I can type SCD. Or, everybody's favorite script step, GTRR. So, the design team and the engineers also did a really good job of picking up all the shortcuts and the shorthand we use to describe script steps and calculation functions. So in this case, I want to show dialog. For not all the script steps have we yet managed to shove them into the little inline, completely keyboard accessible editor. But this is still much, much better than it was. Get to work. Let me just do it. And I just want to add one thing about this. So I was doing this demo this morning online via GoToMeeting to a customer out in Chicago, and they could tell just in the GoToMeeting that I was never going to the mouse because they could see my mouse wasn't moving around as I was editing a script and typing a script, and they were like, so they even picked up on it, over a GoToMeeting. Question from the web?
Yeah, we do have a question from the web. They want to make sure that you show us how to enable or disable lines because they don't see a checkbox anymore.
Yep.
And they're getting kind of agitated here. I'm watching the traffic, so.
All right. So how do I disable or enable a line? So let me just do it here. Let me do
There used to be a checkbox back in the...
There used to be a checkbox. So I'm just going to do go to related record here. And I just want to bring up, this one has another layout. Let's just go use that. Okay, so I set up a go to related record here. So how do I disable the line? So I can go under the edit menu, and I've got disable. But you'll notice there's also a keyboard shortcut there. Command or Control / disables it, enables it. Last thing, how do I make a comment? How would you expect to make a comment? Hashtag. Start typing your comment. Yeah, that's all you got to do. Shift 3, hashtag. You can still type comment too. This is true. Comment. There it is. But it's a whole lot faster to hit Shift 3. In a comment,
It drops out.
it drops out and then gives me a new line. Yeah. So if you print a script, you'll stack comments. So go ahead, Eric. Okay. So he said he switched to a different script. Here. Well, so when I switch to a different script here, you'll see I get 2 tabs. I can open a whole bunch of scripts, in fact. So they're all still here. They're all tabs. So if I go back to my first script, I haven't saved it yet. The star is still there. So if I go to close it, it says, do you want to save this? So let me just do that. Now it's closed. And I think I'm doing something else to like move to another part of the UI. Hit the spacebar because I think the spacebar is going to bring up the calculation dialog. And my script is gone. My calculation is gone. There is no undo here. So that's, just something. So hopefully you will do that before you make any big changes. And I should be able to close this and don't save and bring it back up. And there it is. So, so one thing is anytime you make a big calculation change that you don't want to lose if you're going to be going on to another calculation, just in case, it's a good idea to use save a lot. And the keyboard shortcut Command S does what you expect it to do. It saves your script. Richard.
I should point out this is kind of the 1.0 of this new feature, and it would be worthwhile that if you start to learn this and you spend some time with it. And it takes for me, it took a couple weeks to get used to it. And you have some like really critical idea, like it really would be better if I hit a / here and something happened. You have some sort of feedback. Write it up on FileMaker's website. They have a suggestions area, and give it to the product management team so they can evaluate that, because they really need a little, it always was, this was a major piece of the capability for this product is the script workspace. They spent a ton of engineering time building this and making it work, and there was lots of little arguments along the way about whether it should, if you hit return here, does it go to the right spot? So if you have feedback and you start to play with it, give it a couple weeks or a month or whatever, but then write it up to FileMaker and tell them what you think.
Yes, please do. In fact, the lead engineer for this feature came up to see me today because I did a demo a couple of days ago for an all-company meeting, and he came up to tell me that he really appreciated the great job I did talking about the script workspace. But he then also said, if you get feedback, please get it back to me. Please, submit it through the product management, and it'll filter back to the design and engineering teams. Or if you have anything you think of and you can't remember how to get to there, just feel free to fire off an email to me, and I'll forward it on to the right people as well. More about the script workspace?
It's important to note the way that these work is that product management will look at all the comments, and if enough people start saying the same kinds of things, they pay more attention to it. So your vote does matter here, really. I mean, we're not voting for the president. I mean, if they had 5, 10, 15 people start saying the same thing, in their mind, they're going to start tweaking to that as being maybe important and paying more attention to it. So your feedback here really, really, really is important. So.
Yeah. Yes. So can I change the coloring? The answer is yes, but someone has to help me out because I can't remember where I go to change it. View? View syntax coloring. There it is. So I've got, script flow. So that's things like if, loop. So one thing I find kind of difficult personally is that disabled and incompatible are almost the same, color. So, I might want to make incompatible be red so I really see it as a warning, personally. And maybe I want to make that more into purple, just because I like purple. Not that you could tell today, as I'm wearing green, but anyway. So there. So now my coloring has changed a little bit. Yes?
What happened back and forth
Okay, so question is, what happens if I move between versions? So if I'm moving between 12, 13, and 14 of the FileMaker files and different application environments. So it's very much like it was between FileMaker 7 to FileMaker 11, in that I could work in a forward-looking version, so I could work in FileMaker 11, and as long as I didn't add features that were specific to only FileMaker 11, you know, a FileMaker 10 user could still access that file. You know, so what I expect I'm going to see happening a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people who are already doing this, is they're going to do all their development because of the script workspace primarily in FileMaker 14 for their FileMaker 13 clients. There's still the caveat with themes and styles that you don't necessarily want to go into layout mode in FileMaker 13 or 14 if you've got customers that are still using FileMaker 12. But other than that, yeah, you can go ahead and do all your development in FileMaker 14 with the caveat that if you go ahead and add a button bar to something that's going to be used by FileMaker 13 users, they're going to see a big blank white space. And so again, we also do have under file options here the ability to, again, set that minimum version. So my recommendation is as soon as you add one of those FileMaker 14 specific features, toggle that minimum version so that people don't try to open it with an earlier version. Yeah, so the observation is I can do all my script editing and script development in FileMaker 14 with the caveat that you don't use any of the new in FileMaker 14 script steps. You know, so if you still got users using FileMaker 13, especially FileMaker Go 13, using things like the rotation lock and some of those other new script steps that I'll talk about in a bit, those aren't going to work for those users. So question is, if I develop something in 13, will it work in 14? Yes, it will work just fine in 14. So, you know, obviously FileMaker Go 14 is a free update. There are a few caveats around that, especially around SSL and server security. So last month when I was here, I talked a little bit about the whole complexity of the SSL update we released last month. FileMaker 14 is equivalent to FileMaker's 13 v9 platform. So if you're using SSL and a FileMaker self-signed default certificate, FileMaker Pro 14 or FileMaker Go 14 will not connect to a FileMaker server that is 13 v5 or earlier. So there you do need to manage that. You still do need to manage that. Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, I think, you know, especially server-side and client-server, there's a few other really subtle behavior changes in FileMaker Pro that getting to a 14 across the board environment is really worth it. And I'll talk about some of those later on.
I would just mention, talk to your plugin manufacturers, because 14 is now 64-bit for the most part in Pro, right?
Yeah.
And where it's been 64, and whereas 32-bit previously. So I know, for example, 360works has updated all their plugins, but if you have a 32-bit plugin, like on Mac, you need to make sure that there's 64-bit compatibility, and your plugin manufacturers are up to date.
Yeah. So one other thing I will add on that 64-bit thing, we've had a lot of challenges and a lot of tech support calls from customers that have upgraded to 64-bit versions of Windows on the desktop. They're running the 64-bit version of Microsoft Office Suite, which means 64-bit Outlook, which means that the send mail script step fails. You know, so if you've got customers that are experiencing that, you know, getting them to FileMaker 14, installing the 64-bit version will make all of those problems go away. You're saying no, it doesn't make them go away? Are you sure you installed the 64-bit version and not the 32-bit version? My recommendation would be to call technical support. So the question is, so there's still some failure rate on resolving that Outlook sending mail problem with the 64-bit version of the Pro client. So there are some issues still there because customer support is going to be able to then, you know, log and troubleshoot with them to try and resolve the issue.
I think they're working on a TV article.
Yeah, and we're working on a knowledge base article to go into more information there.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so on the Mac, on 14 Pro, it's all 64-bit. That's the only way it rolls. On Windows, there's an option there which one you install, I believe.
On Mac, you have an option too.
Yeah, on Mac, both install, but you actually decide which way you run it by doing a get info on the package.
Aha, really?
So let me just do
That's
that.
subtle because the downloads for Windows are.
Yeah, there's 2 downloads for Windows. There's 1 download for Mac. So if I go here and do FileMaker, I didn't want to launch it. So on Windows, I do not know what it installs by default. Oh, on the Mac, you get all the bits for both versions, and it runs the 64-bit version by default. But if I go in here and do a get info on the package,
oh, look at that.
Look at that. There is a checkbox that says open in 32-bit mode.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and this is actually documented. There's a knowledge base article on the 32 and 64-bit client compatibility that goes into all the details on how to make that work.
Yeah, so if you have the full plugins that requires
32-bit.
you can still use it as well.
So observation, you can force 32-bit on the Mac if you still have old plugins that are 32-bit and get things to work.
That's
why you come to user guidance, because that is a subtle thing that I've been looking at for months and I missed that. So I don't know.
All right.
Have you seen that? Oh, never mind.
All right. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about in-field labels, and I'll just show you where to set those up. So I already demonstrated that it works, as you would expect. No tricks, no refreshing objects, no stacking objects. It just comes along for the ride. So if I go into layout mode, I go to data. There it is, placeholder to holder text when field is empty. And I read, and I think it was on the Beeswax blog, some great tips about this. I think it was your blog. Yeah, one option is to have something here, use the field comment for what you want in your placeholder text. And then all you need to do here is a calculation to point at the field comment so that that way you'll always get that wherever you put that field. And you've got one calculation to maintain because it uses a self function. And then you will show and hide, as there are field comments. And you can update that comment. So then you can update your placeholder text by updating the comment everywhere you have an instance of that field. So I think that's pretty cool. Under the state styling, there's placeholder text, so I can edit. That's where you would control the color or change the color of it. The other thing I will say about the Beeswax blog post is it has some good notes on where you still want to use field labels and where to use placeholder text. In short, placeholder text is more aimed at hints, and you don't want to use it in place of field labels anywhere where the data in the field might be ambiguous. So if it's really obvious, like, in this example, I go back to browse mode. Here, in the United States, in North America, we know that seeing fields arranged in this pattern is an address. So putting the placeholder labels inside the field is fine. But here if I've got first name and last name, and my name is Chris, or how about Christian, and now I need a good Lloyd. How do I know which is the first name and which is the last name? It's not obvious, especially, I would, maybe infer by field arrangement that it's first name, last name, but it's not obvious.
Go to the next record.
Yeah. Yeah. So Vince's observation is great for instruction when someone's filling out a form. It's less useful when you're browsing through the data and knowing what goes where. Yes?
And you can style the text into the placeholder text to indicate, for example, required field.
Exactly.
Optional field.
Right. So you can do other things to use the placeholder text to, style it for required or optional by just having, basically I'd have 2 styles there, one for a required field, one for a optional field. And I had one other thought on placeholder text, and now I've lost it. Oh, I know what I want to do. I just want to show one other neat thing in layout mode. So we've got a badge for things with placeholder text, and if I hover over this badge or any other object badge, I get a tooltip that tells me here's what the placeholder text is on this field. On conditional formatting, I get a summary of what are the conditional formatting rules. On a tooltip badge, I get what's the tooltip, so I don't have to go look it up in the inspector to get to that information.
This is subtle and awesome all essentially.
Yep. Jay. Okay. The question is, how does Voiceover handle the inline text? Voiceover does not have access to that, so if you're building a solution that needs to be accessible, you'll still want to use traditional field labels because, again, in the accessibility controls, accessibility only has access to labels. The placeholder text is ignored by Voiceover and by JAWS.
Jay, you're talking about 508.
For 508 compliance or other, just accessibility in general. Yeah. All right. Next up, let's talk a little bit about object styling because this is all fun and exciting, and I don't really have it in the button. So here, I can style, so here I've got a button that I styled, which is, the hack we used earlier to get some things, but this is natively styled. The drop-down calendar is natively styled with a color. So if I go into layout mode just to show that, so here I've got a drop-down calendar, and I've got somewhere I can style both the button and the icon part of the drop-down calendar. All right, so here I've styled the icon, here I've styled the button. All right, there's more. Same for drop-down lists, same for pop-up menus. Checkboxes. I can specify the icon to be a check or an X. Let me just zoom in on that. I can say check or X for my icon, and I can change the box color and the icon color. Yay, nice stuff, right? Same for radio buttons.
I think there's a gradient on those green ones. That was cool.
Is there
A little bit of a gradient there on the green dots. Yeah.
on the green dots?
Yeah, the dots. That was cool. That's subtle, they say.
Oh yeah, look at that.
That's probably Nick. Nick Hunter.
No, this was actually Andrew Lecates.
Oh, Andy did this?
Andy did this, yeah.
Nice.
All right. So now let's dive a little bit more fun. Let's have some more fun with iOS because there's a whole lot more going on in iOS than just. And so to start off, let me wake it up again. I'm just going to jump back to QuickTime to show iOS. So first off, here, if I rotate, it's going to be like there. So if I rotate, you'll see sometimes it updates, sometimes it doesn't, and that's just the vestige of QuickTime not updating. No, there we go. Is it just the, there I am. Okay, so there, orientation locked. I'm going to go into the next thing here, and I'm just going to, while I do this, I'm going to start loading the video to play. But watch what happens when I rotate. Nothing happened there. So I've locked this particular layout to portrait, upside down and right side up orientation only. And so now here I am, I'm playing a video. As I go in and say approve, I'm just going to type a comment here and say, looks great. Whatever, autocorrect sometimes is my friend, and go ahead and save that. And when I save it, I start, playing the video, continue to play the video. But what am I doing here? I'm playing the video in the context of my layout. I'm not having the video take over my full screen. I'm interacting with the video as it plays. And I can timestamp. So my comments, you'll notice, have timestamps. So if I go ahead and say play here, I love that third clip, I go to that index point in the video. This also works for straight up audio files as well, and I play it from that point. There's a ton of power and a ton of subtlety here. There's new script steps, new script triggers, and a new calculation that all interact together as part of this feature. The best way to learn about it, really, and I personally haven't had the time to really dive deep and explore it, but the help, I'm just going to make a plug here for FileMaker Help for our documentation team. The new features in FileMaker Pro article is outstanding, and if I go down here there's a whole bunch in here on all the video script steps and script triggers. So that's where to go to use them. But there's things like you can capture, input in video and audio playback from an external microphone. So there's a whole lot going on there. And I think, I see that feature being used extensively in the entertainment industry, obviously, but also, we see it being used possibly in training solutions, where if you've got, users that need to go through a set training curriculum, you'll know, who's the logged in user. Did they watch the whole video to the end? You can capture if they scrub and go back and forth, and what kind of, did they watch something 3 times because they didn't get it? Maybe that's something you can then go back and do some additional work on that part of the curriculum. So there's a lot of interesting uses. And I will say, though, that this is iOS only. Doesn't work on the desktop. So one other thing, so some more things about FileMaker Go that I just want to, point out here. Let me switch the video. I just want to point out, we made some changes to the UI. We really looked at iOS 8 to take our inspiration for the new FileMaker Go user interface, and we buried a lot of stuff under that Actions menu in the upper left. We did a lot of usability testing and found that people always wanted to go to the upper right for search rather than the lower right for search. So now we've put search up in the upper right. And down in the bottom, in the toolbar, we've got the same slider to show records, and I've only got 2 here in my fun set. But also the show all, show omitted, omit records commands are down there. And then down in the lower left, I've got my add, delete, and sort records. So that's new. But I've got some new gestures. With a 3-finger swipe up, I can get rid of all the FileMaker Go Chrome, and now it looks like I'm running in. Previously, I would have had to go into kiosk mode to do this, but it really looks like my solution is now a full iOS app. 3-finger swipe down brings the Chrome back. I've also got control. I can lock out both the toolbar and the menu bar if I need to. So as you go through the sign-in solution, depending on which version I handed over to Bill today, that gesture should not work on the sign-in page. You can't actually get to the FileMaker Go Chrome. It's locked out in that solution. So there's also a bunch of signature enhancements. So I'm going to go ahead and actually open up another file. I'm going to open up my, come on, network, please work. Open up my grab bag file here and come to the iOS signatures demo. So I've got, placeholder text inline for containers. So here, you'll notice I've got placeholder text in my container field with an instruction, right? So here, tap here to sign. There's my text. I'm in portrait mode. I can rotate to landscape mode, and it might update or not, but I can sign, accept my signature, and there it is. So one more thing. And the other one is keyboards. I don't have anything in my demo for that. So, and we already talked about orientation and the video audio stuff. So that's a lot of what's new in FileMaker Go. Questions about Go. Someone said he thinks FileMaker Go 14 is his favorite and the best FileMaker client ever. Yeah, so he's like, I don't want to build for the desktop anymore. I want to do all my development for mobile and WebDirect.
Well, strictly speaking, it has more capabilities. I mean, not even close.
Yep. So that's where we are in FileMaker Go. So last thing I want to show is WebDirect. So I'm going to actually get out of FileMaker here and switch over to Safari on my, and this is where the demo likes to go haywire. But there it is. I'm in FileMaker WebDirect on my iPad. Exciting, right? And I'm going to go ahead and launch approvals here. And now, when I launch approvals, I'm playing the role of Bill from Bill's Activewear. So he's the customer that all the other work has been for. So now I'm the customer. So first of all, I've got some rotation awareness here. Let me just go in and force a redraw. But you'll notice if you look up at the toolbar on the top, you'll see Now I've got an add, delete, and a sort button. And when I go back into Portrait, it flips to be all of those things kind of stacked up there. So in the FileMaker WebDirect toolbar, we've got responsive design. And I've also got, a lot of things are now buried under the toolbar. So you'll notice the toolbar is a lot cleaner and a lot simpler than it was for WebDirect FileMaker 13. And again, I've got a button bar here. I can go ahead and say, send this back for review. I've got my inline field text. I'm going to type my comment, for example, not sure about this. There, autocorrect doesn't like me. Too bendy. Go ahead and save that. There's my comment. Go back. The other thing that I might do is, while I'm out and about, maybe Bill takes a picture of something he likes, or he sees something on the web he likes in another ad. So he can also send a request back into the agency to Samuel for work to do. And here I'm just going to go ahead and say, make a new record. And my title is, something for the fall campaign. Can we do something like this on a poster? And now, again, I've got placeholder text in my icon there on WebDirect. I'm going to tap and choose an image. I'm just happy because this is being nice and responsive. And you'll notice how responsive it is on a mobile, in a room with Wi-Fi that may or may not be busy, but I think you all are being nice to me and staying off the Wi-Fi. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that photo. There it is, and now I can submit that back. And if I go back to my FileMaker Pro client and pretend I'm Samuel again, you'll notice if I go into browse mode, he's got a little message up here. There's my request. I can go ahead, mark that as received. I like it. And save a comment back for Samuel. Now if I go back to WebDirect, provided the demo is actually doing everything I want to do, I see now that Bill has received that and added a comment. So there's WebDirect. And I've got some slides from Vin that talk a little bit more in depth about the performance improvements in WebDirect and what we've done there. But I think just having WebDirect, on mobile, Rick Coleman has said that the single biggest product feature request we've ever gotten is to have FileMaker Go for Android. And now we have FileMaker WebDirect for Android tablets. So, Suzanne.
Performance-wise, does the customer still have to have 2 servers?
Okay. So, performance-wise, the question is, what do you need for WebDirect deployments? And we do still recommend 2 servers for more than a handful of users, but those servers are much more capable. So let me just actually, while I'm at it, just bring up the tech specs for FileMaker Server so I get these exactly right. So let me go to Products. Let's look at FileMaker Server. Tech specs. So you'll notice here for your FileMaker WebDirect minimum hardware requirements, and we're still saying you need a second machine with more than 7. But that second machine can be an 8 GB RAM 4-core processor to support up to 25 clients. 26 to 50 clients requires 12 GB and 8-core, and then 51 to 100 clients on the 16 gig 12-core. So if you think back to what our requirements were for FileMaker 13, you're able to support about twice as many clients at each step of the hardware recommendation with FileMaker 14 than you were with FileMaker 13 WebDirect. Question, yes.
This is concurrent connections.
Yes, this is for concurrent connections. But personally, I think it looks great, and it feels a lot more responsive when you're typing and working in it. So again, I'd encourage you to play around and test. Right now, I am serving off of my laptop and also participating in a GoToMeeting and doing everything else. So for the demo, I am serving off my laptop. With that, I'm going to go back. What? Do you have a question?
No, you want me to feedback a little bit on the.
Yeah.
So FileMaker's being pretty conservative.
FileMaker's being pretty conservative when it comes to this whole WebDirect. WebDirect capability is vastly better than what they tell you here.
And they're downplaying it. They're FileMaker, I'm not. And I'm going to say that it's, as a personal person who's been using it, and now that we reflect what the company says, but it's way better. It's not 25% faster. At a minimum, on most situations, it's at least double. If you're taking it to a phone or mobile device, it's in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 times faster. And I've talked to engineering about this. This is no joke. And we're talking 1,000% faster. It wasn't really functional before on the small mobile devices. It's been specifically engineered to work on that. And FileMaker, they're careful about what they promise. She's over there and I'm over here. I'm just saying my personal experience has been that it works smoking well on Android phones.
And do you still have to have 2 servers?
I don't.
Okay, that's all I need.
Okay. But you're going to want to scale and play with it and see how far you get with the server. The memory footprint on a per client basis, this was courtesy of Nick Lightbody, another one of the top tier developers in the community. He did some extensive testing on this, and so much so that the product he interacted with product management here. And they came to the conclusion that's about 32 megabytes per client that you want to connect in, so you need to add that. And it kind of scales, but it basically works out to about 32. 32 megabytes per WebDirect client that you want to connect in. That's how much it's going to burn on the server. So megabytes. That's again, it's megs. Yeah, this WebDirect is completely re-engineered.
Yep.
Okay. Tons of money. The 2 big things in this release: WebDirect, which gives us compatibility to Android once again, and Android's not Apple, right? And the other part of this is the script workspace. Those are 2 huge engineering components that stopped the engineering team dry. I don't want to say clay. I mean, there's other things too, but if you talk about the areas that they had the most documentation on, the most bugs, the most stress over, were these 2 areas. But they're the parts that we really need. We need a great scripting environment, and we need to be able to go out to these other users, this other market. The market between iOS and Android is 92%, 93%. It's crazy.
That last 6, 7, 8% are
BlackBerries that are going bye-bye, and whatever Windows phones that Microsoft's convinced you to buy. Those are the people that are kind of out in the wind. Now here's another one. Chromebook, bought one with the latest stuff on it. Guess what? It works. Now they can't say that. They're not going to. They probably never certify it, but I can tell you that a modern Chromebook with the latest stuff seems to run WebDirect just in game. So I got one for the record with 4 gigs, and 2 or 4 gigs of memory. I found a little bit more, but you need to play with it. This is cool stuff. And they're downplaying it because they don't want to get yelled at. Right? I don't blame them. Okay, but it rocks. It rocks. It's big. And so people say, hey, where's the Android support? Here, touchdown. They just go to it. It should be on the banner from the building. Droid support here, but I was told in those uncertain terms by senior marketing people who I sit and talk with that I can say certain things that they can't and they won't say ever. But I'm here to tell you that this stuff is cool.
All right. So, yes.
What about the save as PDF?
Save as PDF, export. Export still works, no save as PDF. I mean, save as PDF is a licensing challenge. Like we pay for the licensing with every FileMaker Pro and client sold, every FileMaker Go download, we pay a royalty on PDF. We can't support that on WebDirect. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more. So we've talked about server from the standpoint of WebDirect, but there's some other really kind of nice, juicy stuff in server. So first, and this is sort of a combination Pro and server feature I alluded to earlier, Reconnect to server. So how many times have you been working on something, closed up your laptop, gone somewhere else, opened up your laptop, and had that really sad dialogue? That doesn't happen anymore. It's really, really nice. It's great, and that only works FileMaker Pro Advanced 14 going to FileMaker Server 14. we've got some new security improvements, and they're subtle, and I can bring them up. But when you're setting up your admin passwords on your admin password, you get a password strength indicator. It says, do you have a weak, moderate, or strong password? You can have a hint to reset your password, and we won't let you make the hint be the password. And the other thing is you've got a PIN. So how many times have you had a customer who didn't write down their admin account name and password when they set up FileMaker Server, when they did that first deployment? Happens all the time. Right, so now when you're doing your deployment, you can set up a PIN, just like you do for your ATM card. No, it's not even uninstall. You can do it without uninstalling. You can go into the FileMaker Server directory tree and remove a few documents, but you don't even have to do that anymore. So you don't have to trash your entire configuration in order to reset your admin username and password. Yay, right? So then the last new feature in FileMaker Server is Standby Server. And this is a command line only tool for experienced administrators. What it is a warm spare. What it is not is automatic failover. So just a little bit about how this works. So when you set up with one FileMaker Server license, one FileMaker Server license key, you can set up a pair of FileMaker servers. One will be your primary, that's the one that's got the files open, that's hosting out 2 clients. The other is the standby server, and that is running FileMaker Server in a sort of suspended state with all the files closed. Under the hood, using the progressive backup mechanism, the primary is pushing data changes over to the standby server, keeping the files in sync. Right? So, next thing that happens, primary server falls off the network. Someone unplugs it, someone kicks the network cord, bad things happen. As a server administrator, you go to the command line of the standby server and execute a command that says, drop this configuration, make me be the primary. So now I have a standalone primary server. The other scenario that you might have is you've got these 2 things happily doing their thing, and you need to do some maintenance on your primary server. In that case, you can do a more orderly switchover by going to the primary, and actually, why don't I push a copy one more time to make sure things are really in sync? And then I'm going to orderly tell FileMaker, do the switchover, and that will actually just swap my primary and standby. So my old standby is now the primary. My primary is now the standby. So now I can shut down the standby, do my OS and FileMaker Server updates, and then do another switchover, and then do those updates on the standby as well. So what controls the addressing? So I'm getting to that. Give me a second. So first thing is I will recommend there is a chapter on this feature in the FileMaker Server Getting Started guide. Read that. If you want to use this feature, you must follow the steps in order, precisely in detail. If you're just like skimming through and you skip a step, it's not going to work. And it is all done from the command line, which is why this is an experienced administrator only kind of feature. But basically, you issue a command like FMS admin standby connect to my second server, and then you log in with the admin account, and then what happens when you set up the standby is when you make the pairing, you get a numeric code from the servers, and you have to make sure that code is entered on the standby that is given to you by the primary, and that is actually what makes the connection. So a couple other things about this. Your servers need to be on the same platform, so it's got to be 2 Windows or 2 Mac servers, and they should be identical in configuration. So they should have the same processor, the same RAM, the same hard drive configuration in order for this to all work well. Same OS, I said that. Oh, same OS version. Yeah.
Platform is different.
From version. OS, yeah. So you can't do it on Windows. You can't have one be 2008, one be 2012. They've both got to be 2012. R2.
And one be a VM?
Can one be a VM and one be a standalone server?
Well, you can try it.
You can try it.
The two VMs are quite well.
Two VMs work really well. I mean, and that's pretty much all our internal testing has probably been on two VMs. All my playing with the feature has been on two VMs. So, yes. Plug gets full.
The primary die.
All right, so the question is, so in that scenario when the primary dies, would you then want to do an orderly swap back? In fact, what you need to do in that case, if the primary dies and you go to the standby and make that be the primary, that is now a standalone, unlinked primary FileMaker server. So in order to bring that configuration back online, you need to reset up the standby pairing.
So the original primary will still believe that
Is a primary
is a primary.
when it comes back up.
So
Yep. So all of that. So to repeat for the people online, the old primary, when it comes back up, is going to think it's a primary. So you're going to want to execute a disconnect command, and then go to your current primary, and then reconnect the servers. There's a little bit of work and a little bit of, and again, well documented very clearly in the server getting started guide. Right. So the question is when server B is the primary, server A comes back. So the first thing that's going to happen is server A is going to come back, and it's going to do a license key check and say, wait a minute, I've got a license key conflict, and not open the files in an ideal situation. But otherwise, yes, you've got to be careful when server A comes back up to make sure you get your files back in sync. That is absolutely correct.
Push them from B to A, like A was pushing them from A to B.
You can. So what you would have to do is you reconnect them. You can do the copy from B to A, and then you're back in sync. It's all documented. Yeah. So the comment from the room was, when you do that reconnection, part of that process is copying the files, and it will abort if the files, you'll get an error if the files are out of sync, and it will abort, but you can use -- overwrite to force the files to copy from B back to A, and again, this is all documented. So that's standby server. Yeah. What are the notification methods that get you noted? Yeah, that get you notified that something has happened. No sort of additional notifications.
That's why it's not called fail.
Yeah. All right, so observation is, so there's no sort of additional notification mechanisms that we didn't have before, except if you're getting warning emails. As an administrator, you say, send me the warning emails. If one of the two servers in a pair goes down, you will get notification emails about it, and then you can go do something about it. And a question from the web.
There is a question.
They're asking if you're using WebDirect, right, a single machine config WebDirect, and you set up the standby server, how's the WebDirect clients going to be able
Okay,
to see?
that's a good question. So if you're using WebDirect on a single machine configuration,
I would assume these would be single machine.
well, so for WebDirect, the sort of most usual supported configuration is a 2-machine configuration that with standby server turns into a 3-machine configuration, where your standby is managing the database server portions, and you have an outward-facing web server that is, serving WebDirect or other web clients, and then it points back to the primary and the secondary servers. Yeah.
So just clear up.
Clear up? Let me just repeat that back for the web. So if the primary server goes down, you won't get your warning emails. You'll get them if the secondary server, the standby server goes down. And that is because the primary server goes down, it's not there to send you emails. So what you need to do in that case is what customers have been doing for many years, which is have some sort of other watcher box on the network that's pinging all your servers to make sure that they're still there and still responding with a heartbeat, and then sending out notifications.
And there's one more question.
One more question.
They're asking about externally stored containers. Are they synced as part of the primary? And everyone's bobbing their head up and down, so the answer clearly is yes, the external containers are taken care of.
External containers are taken care of.
You just want to mention that the Reconnect feature works this way too.
Yes.
So if you do a clean switchover, your clients that logged in may not even know that they switched servers.
Yep, I was getting to that right now. So, clean switchover. What happens to clients? So let's start with the old behavior. You close your laptop, you fall off the network, your server goes down, you get this nice dialog that says, I'm going to close your file. And you can say, okay. That's all that can happen.
Goodbye.
Yes, goodbye. Goodbye file, goodbye unstored work, everything else. With this new feature, I will get this new dialog, which is basically pretty much the same, except do you want to try to reconnect your files? So there's a new question there. So this will happen in a couple of things. I close my laptop, I go home, I open it back up. I might see this dialog flash, but if I don't touch anything, it's going to just reconnect in the background. Another situation, you do an orderly switchover from your primary server to your standby server. The users might see this while the switchover is happening, but what's happening is when you connect to FileMaker Server with FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Go, FileMaker Server returns to you both the path to the primary server and the path to the standby server. So what FileMaker Pro is going to do is if it loses that connection, it's going to try to reconnect to both the primary server and the standby server. So one other thing about this dialog, and this is one of those things that is not as clear as it might be. If you click reconnect, you're going to try exactly one more time and then close the files if they're not there. If you leave this dialog up, FileMaker will continue to try to reconnect until it actually makes a connection. And there's a time interval that I'm forgetting, but I'm sure one of you two can tell me like what the timing works.
Yeah, there's a pattern to it. Basically, the concept is the same.
Okay, so to repeat that back for the web, you're going to try frequently at first. So it'll try every 15 seconds, it'll try once a minute, and eventually it will like stretch out so it just continuously tries to reconnect once every 10 minutes. And that's really intended to save battery life on your portable battery-operated devices.
So when it does this automatic reconnect, assuming that it manages to reconnect successfully, are you required to re-authenticate?
So the question is, when you reconnect, are you required to re-authenticate? No.
Well, can then this feature be disabled? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, can you, huh? Yeah, there is an extended privilege to disable the reconnect. Mm-hmm. Yes, so the question is, when it successfully reconnects, does the dialog box go away? Yes, eventually that dialog box will go away, and I'll be back where I was with my same font set, my same file open, everything.
How long does the server?
So the question is how long does server process to save you? It's not server that's saving your session. It's that Pro, the client, knows what state it's in and what files it's trying to connect to. And so once it reestablishes that connection, so it could stay that way forever. So the question is, you will not have lost your uncommitted changes? Yep, so to repeat for the web, so basically we've implemented in FileMaker Pro 14 the hibernate behavior we had in FileMaker Go 13. And in response to a question about what happens to my uncommitted changes. And so the answer is, if you can still get the lock on the records, meaning that the data hasn't changed on that record, but if that data has changed or the record has been deleted or for some other reason FileMaker Pro can't reestablish that record lock, you will get a message that says, you're going to lose those uncommitted changes.
Here's the mod.
Yeah. Yeah, so that it's using under the hood an internal modification ID on the record. All right.
Yeah, I'll get you after.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll
I'm just gonna, like, say it's been a great conversation, but it is 5 minutes to 9, and I kind of don't want to be here till 10 o'clock because I've had a really long week. But also, I'll take one more question, then I would just want to wrap up with a few more slides and then go. Go ahead, Jim.
Compatibility of running FileMaker.
So the question is, can I have FileMaker 13 clients accessing FileMaker Server 14? Absolutely. The other question is, can I host a file with FileMaker 14 features on FileMaker Server 13? And the answer there is, for the most part, yes. That's all handled in FileMaker Pro. So you should be able to do that. But again, as always, you're always going to get the best client-server performance when you're pairing your versions of FileMaker. And usually, anytime you're going from, a more modern client to an older version of server, that's where you're going to see the biggest performance degradation. So, yeah, big advice there. Don't hit that reconnect button. All right, so I've got a few other thoughts. These are thoughts from Vin that he's been sharing about performance, specifically overall server performance, and specifically WebDirect performance. And performance is a feature that performance is something we look at as a feature and work on in every release. And of course, it's very crucial for our mobile strategy, just because mobile devices are less performant, but we really want to bring WebDirect to those mobile devices. So with WebDirect, here's a snapshot of the things that we did to improve performance. First of all, we rewrote the fields interface from the ground up, and we moved to WebSockets for the communication in most cases, and we optimized when and how often we push data back from server down to the client and from the WebDirect client back to server. And the net result of this is when you're on a decent network connection, you see that little spinner a lot less frequently. And there's a lot of other under the hood changes as well. So results, as we've said, approximately 25% faster overall for web optimized layouts. And then we tested with up to 100 users on Mac, Windows, and mobile devices in a large variety of databases, number of records, layout complexity, using a load generator. And what we measure in that is the number of find, add, delete, edit, and record saves. Sorts, sorry. So that's basically the methodology we use to get to that performance. So wrap up a bunch of the new features, and I just want to give I've got a couple of slides on operating system requirements because there are some changes here that are important. For Pro and Pro Advanced, Mavericks and Yosemite only on OS 10, and Windows 7, 8, and 8.1. So that's pretty much what you expect, right? FileMaker Go is iOS 8.1 or later only. FileMaker Server, again, Mavericks and Yosemite only, and for web publishing purposes, no OS 10 server app. As it is with Server 13. And for Windows Server, it's 2008 R2 SP1 and 2012 R2 Standard with that listed update. And the other note there for customers that are still running 2012, not 2012 R2, we don't block installation on 2012, but we did not do our full battery of testing, stability and performance testing on 2012. But we did pick up 2012 R2, which for me, and I think from a support standpoint, makes everybody really happy because we've been being beat up about it for 18 months, or nearly 18 months. I mean, the other observation there is most of our larger customers are now rolling out 2012 R2. They're not deploying 2012, and they're not deploying 2008 R2 anymore. And then so for your WebDirect browser support, on the desktop, it's the same as it was for WebDirect with FileMaker 13, And then for mobile browsers, it's mobile Safari on iOS 8.1 and Chrome 38 or later on Android 4.4x. So that's your operating systems. And just a few other notes on connections, and this is a questions we're getting. You know, just, I don't want to say a lot there, but so one thing is concurrent connection pricing has gone up, but you can also now buy, in addition to the concurrent connections, you could buy, you know, up to 50 before. There's now also a step to 20 to 75 and 100 concurrent connections. So I believe that is all I've got. And it is 9 o'clock on the dot. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you all coming out tonight. And I'll stick around for a few minutes for questions. But thanks for coming, and I'm like looking forward to seeing what everybody's building, and you know, to some presentations with like deeper dives and cool tricks you can do with things. And I will say, especially if you want to dive into all the varying things you can do with the button bar, I highly recommend investigating the projects and event management starter solutions, because in those two files, Nicholas has done some really amazing stuff. Vince. So the grab bag file, right now, we're still kind of completing them, but I will make them available as well. And in fact, I can make this version available if you just send me an email. All right. Thanks, Richard, for managing the video production.